Humans have existed on planet Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. We were all born here, and without getting too morbid, we're all going to die here. It's amazing that there's so much we don't know about this blue-green ball of ours. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are things you never knew about the Earth. Hospitals are infection hotspots. No surprises there. I mean, it's where all the sick people are, right? But in New South Wales, a year-long campaign tried to fix this by getting medical staff to clean their hands properly. At the end of the year, researchers checked the results and found that things had improved, but not by much. Their doctors were still the biggest culprits, with hand hygiene levels jumping from a shocking 26% to a still not so great 38%. Nurses, on the other hand, improved from 54 to 65%. Doctors even lost to allied health workers, who went from 40 to 48%. It's not a question most of us ask every day, but once you start thinking about it, it's a head scratcher. As The Atlantic's Catherine Wu pointed out, the evolution of the anus is a pretty big deal in the animal kingdom. Before it showed up, animals had to eat and excrete through the same opening. Not exactly efficient, right? The appearance of the anus allowed animals to evolve into larger, more complex shapes. But here's the kicker. Scientists still don't know which creature developed the anus first, or exactly when it happened. And since soft tissue like this doesn't fossilize, it's a tough mystery to crack. Oh, and why do humans have such big butts compared to other mammals? That's still up for debate too. You might think your tear ducts are the source of all your tears, but they've been taking credit for something they don't do for ages. Tears are created by the lacrimal glands located above your eyes. Once those tears have done their job of keeping your eyes moist and comfortable, they drain through a small opening near your nose called puncta. From there, they travel through narrow tubes, your tear ducts, and into your nose. So tear ducts are really just the plumbing, not the tear factory. There's deep sea life, and then there's deep, deep sea life. Living things exist under the sea floor on a microbial level. What does that mean? Well, it basically means we're talking about really, really small organisms. For example, in 2020, it was reported that scientists found a bunch of these organisms in rock samples taken from the South Pacific. They lived in the crevices of the rock and survived on methane. Yeah, methane. Areas such as these, and the sunlight-free parts of the ocean known as the twilight zone, ensure that experts have their work cut out exploring the depths of our planet. As if doctors' questionable hand hygiene wasn't enough, imagine them poking around inside your brain while you're awake. During certain procedures, patients have to stay conscious so surgeons can monitor critical areas, like the parts controlling speech. And yes, it's as horrifying as it sounds. Your head is locked into place, a piece of your skull is missing, and your brain is out in the open. Some patients panic, cry, or even try to grab at their own brains. As you dive deeper into the ocean, sunlight starts to vanish. About 200 meters, or 650 feet down, you enter the twilight zone, a region where sunlight barely reaches and our knowledge grows murky too. According to Andon Lavery from the Woods Hole Oceanic Institution, we know so little about this mysterious part of the ocean that it's easier to define it by what we don't know. What we do know is that this region plays a critical role. Some experts believe there may be more fish living in the twilight zone than in all other parts of the ocean combined. Plus, these deep-sea creatures are thought to play a huge role in regulating our climate, but I'll get to that in a bit. If you thought thee and thou were the fancy, formal ways to address someone, well, think again. Back in the day, these words were reserved for people you knew well, used in casual, one-on-one conversations. If you want to be formal or address a group, you and your were the way to go. It's similar to how languages like Spanish still use different forms of you depending on formality. Surprisingly, people used thee and thou in prayer because they viewed God as someone personal, like having a heart-to-heart with a very dear and close friend. Typically, I associate clouds with covering up the sun and dumping a ton of rain on me at precisely the wrong moment. However, did you know that clouds are actually helpful to the human race? Take them away, and we'd be 13 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. That's quite a leap. Now, if you live in a cold place, it doesn't really sound so bad. But if you're in a scorchingly hot location, then clouds are something to be thankful for. Plus, as you may have heard, increases in temperature aren't exactly the best thing for the planet right now. Would you still enjoy beef if your steak looked like the animal it came from? Beef, chicken, pork, none of these resemble the creatures they once were. But oysters? They're served whole, looking nothing like more than a rock. Here's the thing though, oysters are actual animals. They have a mouth, stomach, heart, intestines, and muscles. They can live for 20 years, recognize threats, and even change gender multiple times. The only thing they don't have is a brain, which is why most people believe they can't feel pain. But according to science, it's not that simple. While oysters don't have a central nervous system to process pain the way humans do, they do have a basic nervous system. When threatened, they react by snapping their shells shut. This might indicate a response to harm, even if it's not conscious suffering. Quantum entanglement might sound like something from a sci-fi movie, but it's actually real, and scientists are still scratching their heads over it. Basically, it's when two particles are so closely linked that even if they're light years apart, what happens to one instantly affects the other. It's one of those phenomena that totally breaks our understanding of time and space. And here's where it gets even weirder. Researchers now think black holes could be entangled, potentially connecting them through wormholes. Some even suggest that space, time, and gravity could all be part of one huge quantum network. Covered bridges aren't just built that way to look charming. They've actually got a practical side. Rain, snow, and sun can really wear down the wood over time, so the covers help to extend the bridge's lifespan significantly. It's a simple but clever design that keeps these iconic structures standing strong for decades, sometimes even centuries. I mentioned teeny tiny organisms a little earlier, which live at the microbial level. Microbes are everywhere. They're here in enormous numbers, as research has shown. Take soil, for instance. Let's say you've been out for a walk and there's some soil in the sole of your shoe. Brush that off, and you may have enough for a teaspoonful. How many microbes do you think are in that little teaspoon? It's 1 billion. And within that billion are reported 10,000 species of organisms. Something to think about the next time you're at the park. Discovering a new species is usually exciting. It gives us hope and helps us understand the natural world a little better. But the force flies from Costa Rica, this one probably should have stayed hidden. It's tiny, just 20 millimeters long, but put it under a microscope and it looks like the kind of thing straight out of a monster movie. Amongst other things, the males have genital pinchers longer than their own bodies. Yeah, let's not go there. Scientists think these intimidating pincers are used to fight other males or to hold on to females during mating. Lovely. Trying to predict the future of evolution is tricky, but that doesn't stop scientists from imagining what animals might look like millions of years from now. According to Liz Alter, an evolutionary biologist, it's important to consider how humans are changing the environment today. With climate change, urbanization, and other human impacts, the future of animal life on Earth is bound to take some unexpected twists. While we can't be exactly sure what creatures will roam the planet, thinking about it gives us a fascinating glimpse into the unknown. It might feel like restaurateur is missing an N, but that's not a mistake. While a restaurant is the place you go to eat, a restaurateur refers to the person who runs or owns the establishment. The word comes from French, and despite the temptation to add that extra letter, restaurateur has always been spelled this way. So even if it looks or sounds a bit odd at first, the spelling is totally correct and has been for centuries. When you turn on your tap, the water you're enjoying comes from the ground. Groundwater is pumped out of the earth by humans for various reasons, and the effects on our environment are dramatic. In certain cases, the landscape can subside due to the force water exerts on rock. Remove the water, and things can go downhill. We can actually see the extent to which this is happening by looking down on the planet using satellites and such. We've observed that the axis of the Earth has been altered because of the demand for groundwater. I never knew that, and to be honest, I'm not sure I wanted to know. It's scary stuff. Leave it to the Germans to give us a word for something we didn't even know we needed. Alongside Schadenfreude, happiness at others' misfortunes, and Glücksschmerz, happiness at others' successes, we have Backpfeifengesicht, a face badly in need of a fist. Now, before you go labeling your boss as one, it's worth noting that the word refers to the face, not the person. As odd as it sounds, science actually backs this up. Researchers believe that in humanity's early days, when fighting came down to fists, male faces evolved to take a punch. Over time, our features became more delicate, but some faces retain traits that might explain why they seem extra punchable. We all deal with time every day, but how much do we really know about it? There are plenty of theories, but the big question is still unanswered. What is time, really? Is it something we've just made up to track our days? Or does it have a deeper role in the universe? And why does it only move forward? Could it ever run backward? We know how to move forward in time, just wait a year or two. But sending messages to the past? That still sounds like science fiction. Some scientists think time might be tied to game theory or something called cellular automata, but for now, it remains one of the biggest puzzles in science. Contrary to what you might believe, oil paint doesn't dry like other paints. While acrylic paint dries as water evaporates from the pigment, oil paint works differently. It actually undergoes a chemical reaction that makes the oil harden over time. The process can be slow, but working in a dry, well-ventilated space can help speed things up. Some artists even say that exposure to natural sunlight can make all the difference. The landmass of Earth is covered with tectonic plates. And if you don't know what these are, they form a series of rock layers, meaning that countries and different territories are sitting on epic slabs of rock that have a tendency to, shift around. Nowhere is this more true perhaps than Australia. It was reported in 2016 that the country had moved several feet over the past couple of decades. Amazingly, this has given GPS a headache because it apparently can't keep track of all that shifting in the land down under. It may even collide with another place, like a huge and very slow-moving bumper car. I promise I'm not out here to turn everyone into a vegan today, but disturbing science is disturbing science. Muscles store glycogen as energy, and after death, this glycogen breaks down into lactic acid. This process lowers the meat's pH, which is essential for slowing bacterial growth, preserving texture, and maintaining a fresh appearance. When animals are stressed before slaughter, they burn through their glycogen reserves, leaving little to convert into lactic acid. The result is meat that changes color, loses its tenderness, and spoils faster. The harsh reality? A spoiled animal, one that's well-rested and unstressed, produces better meat. The idea that intelligent life might exist elsewhere in the universe has fascinated us for ages. With the sheer number of planets out there, it seems possible, maybe even likely, that we aren't alone. But despite efforts like the SETI project, we still haven't received any definitive signals. So what's the holdup? There are a couple of theories. Maybe advanced civilizations have decided not to contact us, thinking it's a bad idea. Or maybe the messages are out there, and we just don't know how to detect them yet. Either way, we just don't have the answers. Did you know the liquid inside a coconut isn't actually coconut milk? It's coconut water? Coconut water comes from young green coconuts and is packed with electrolytes, making it a favorite health drink. Coconut milk, however, is made by grating the meat of mature coconuts and mixing it with water to create that creamy texture we use in cooking. So one is great for cooking, whereas the other is basically the perfect refreshing beverage. Fans of the TV series, or those who simply enjoy visiting national parks, will be interested to know that Yellowstone has its very own volcano. The park features what's known as a caldera, or a crater-like depression made when the Earth went pop hundreds of thousands of years ago. This geological pockmark is reportedly 44 miles wide. That's a whole lot of lava. And there's a lot more still there under the ground, resulting in hot springs and geysers. Should you be worried about an eruption at Yellowstone? Well, probably not, as it's been quiet for a long, long time. Though, I'd suggest bringing your running shoes next time you visit. And do visit. Yellowstone is gorgeous. I have been there. It is beautiful. I will admit, Old Faithful, a little smaller than I thought it'd be, still really cool. Studies have found that heterosexual women with less attractive male partners tend to be happier and more satisfied overall. They believe it might be because men, who don't rely on their looks, make up for it in other ways, like planning more dates or putting extra effort into their intimate lives. On the flip side, women with more attractive partners often feel pressure to keep up. A different study showed that these women are more likely to diet or stress about their appearance, which can lead to dissatisfaction. It's interesting to note that men are not nearly as concerned if their partners are more attractive, which speaks volumes about how society's beauty standards disproportionately affect women. Is it possible that someone alive today could reach 150 years old? No one knows for sure. While the average human lifespan has increased over the years thanks to advancements in healthcare, we're not sure if there's an upper limit. Could someone live well into their second century? The technology and medicine that could make that possible might already be in the works, but if we figure it out, it raises some serious questions. For instance, how would society adapt to people living that long? What would that do to our current retirement planning and the job market? Well, maybe we'll find out in the near future. Even though we always picture cats happily lapping up their bowl of milk, most adult cats are actually lactose intolerant. As kittens, they produce the enzyme lactase, which helps them to digest their mother's milk. However, as they grow older, many lose the ability to break down lactose. That means offering milk to your adult cat might actually leave them with an upset stomach rather than the delicious treat you were hoping for. Over in China, experts marveled over an ancient forest that was preserved thanks to the devastating eruption of a volcano. Such eruptions can cause chaos, but one intriguing thing they do is bury the past in great condition. We've seen it in Pompeii, and now here in the Wuda forest, which was uncovered beneath a carpet of volcanic ash after centuries in 2012. Located under a coal mine in Inner Mongolia, it's believed to be approximately 300 million years old, and gives a glimpse of what the planet was like back in the days when our continents hadn't broken apart and formed separate territories. The plant life dates back to the Permian period, or Paleozoic era. Discoveries included extinct examples of trees and leaves on branches. Fatal familial insomnia, or FFI, is a rare genetic condition caused by a mutation in the PRNP gene, which leads to a buildup of abnormal prion proteins in the brain. Once it begins, it destroys the thalamus, the part of the brain that controls sleep, and victims can never sleep again. The symptoms are horrific. Patients stay awake for months, slipping into a half-dream state where they hallucinate and act out surreal visions, like miming the act of brushing their hair. As the condition worsens, they lose the ability to speak and then walk until their body shuts down completely. Death is inevitable, and there's no treatment for it. Millions of people have experienced long-term symptoms from COVID-19, sometimes lasting for weeks or even months after they've recovered from the initial infection. But are these long-haul symptoms specific to COVID? Scientists can't seem to agree. While some believe it's unique, others argue that other viral infections can also leave people with lingering symptoms, though they've often been overlooked in medicine. Conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome, for instance, have long been linked to viral infections. The common thread between these long-haul symptoms seems to be how the body reacts after the virus is gone, whether through persistent viral particles, reactivation of dormant viruses, or autoimmune responses that lead to ongoing inflammation. Think Chipotle is a unique pepper? It's actually just a smoked jalapeno. These dry and smoked peppers are known for their smoky sweet flavor with hints of bitterness. Ranging from 2,500 to 10,000 Scoville heat units, Chipotle peppers pack a medium heat, adding a rich depth to dishes. There are also different types of Chipotle peppers, but they all share the same jalapeno origins, proving that in the culinary world, sometimes a little smoke makes all the difference. You might be aware of scenes in movies and TV where the sky rains frogs. This isn't some crazy thing that they made up. There are recorded cases of amphibians plummeting from the clouds and creating pandemonium for unsuspecting people. Well, where do the frogs come from? It isn't a weird wormhole or anything like that, but a natural phenomenon. The theory goes that extreme weather conditions can gather up whatever lays in their path and deposit these things elsewhere. Something like a tornado can collect roof tiles, a car, and apparently an army of frogs. As long as it doesn't pick at any sharks, I think we're fine. A Stanford study has found that people with psychotic disorders interpret auditory hallucinations differently based on their culture. In the US, patients almost always describe the voices as hostile and violent, feeling like they were under constant attack. But in Ghana and India, things were very different. Indian patients said the voices were playful or even helpful, like a relative giving advice. In Ghana, half the patients believed the voices came from God and didn't see them as a problem at all. Scientists now believe it all boils down to our cultural values. Americans tend to focus on independence and control, while Ghanaians and Indians define themselves through relationships. Endometriosis is a chronic condition where tissue, similar to the lining of the uterus, grows in other parts of the body, often causing severe pain. Despite how debilitating it can be, doctors still don't fully understand what causes it, and treatment options are frustratingly limited. To make matters worse, many people with endometriosis face dismissive attitudes from healthcare professionals, often taking years to receive a proper diagnosis. One of the biggest issues is the lack of research funding. Endometriosis has been historically underfunded and under-researched, and patients always leave waiting rooms in hospitals feeling incredibly neglected. I know it's one of those things that we never really think about, but as it turns out, the phrase biting down isn't quite accurate. When you chew, your upper jaw stays in place, and it's your lower jaw that hinges upward to do the work. So technically, you're biting up, not down. It's a small but fascinating detail that makes you rethink something you've probably never even questioned before. One of the strangest things of all planet Earth is how little we know about really basic stuff. Can you believe that after all these centuries, experts still scratch their heads over the stuff we take into our lungs? Oxygen is essential to life on Earth, but it moves in mysterious ways. The origin of oxygen as a thing lies with microorganisms known as cyanobacteria. That's just a fancy word for algae, by the way. Just as we humans release carbon dioxide as we breathe out, this algae released a lot of oxygen approximately 2.5 billion years back, which went up into the atmosphere. Experts have noted that it took a while after this for the oxygen to reach a breathable level. That said, they aren't sure what ultimately led us to having this handy atmosphere which we all rely on to breathe. Vaccines are life-saving, but they can have unexpected consequences. Take whooping cough, for example. In 2012, the US had its worst outbreak since 1955, despite decades of vaccinations. It happened because the DTaP vaccine only targets one bacteria behind the disease, Bordetella pertussis. But there's another culprit, Bordetella parapertussis, and it's been thriving. In fact, vaccinated people are 40 times more likely to get lung infections from B. parapertussis because the vaccine doesn't protect against it. Vaccines can also push viruses to evolve. China learned this the hard way when hepatitis B vaccines caused the virus to mutate twice as fast. The flu virus does something similar. That's why we have to update the flu vaccines every year. In 2008, archaeologists uncovered a 5,000-year-old skeleton in a tomb near Seville, Spain, buried with a crystal dagger and valuable artifacts, clearly indicating this individual held significant status. Initially thought to be a young man based on the pelvis bone, further analysis using a more precise technique revealed something surprising. The skeleton belonged to a woman. And that's where the real mystery probably began. Who was she? Why was she buried with such treasures? And what role did she play in her society? Despite all of our scientific advancements, the true identity of this prehistoric leader remains a mystery. It's not just humans that develop regional accents. Apparently cows do too. At some point in time, not too long ago, dairy farmers noticed slight differences in the way their cows mooed. Word got to the language specialist at the University of London, who didn't take long to come up with a study and actually discovered that different herds have their own distinct mooing sounds, depending on where they're from. What's next? New oinking dialects? Oh god. Remember when I talked about the Wuda forest and how it dated back to a time when the continents were all joined together? That brings me to supercontinents. Specifically, an enormous mass of land called Pangaea that existed some 350 million years ago, according to scientists. When Pangaea developed what's described as a three-pronged fissure, giving birth to what we now know as America and Africa, it was only a matter of time before it broke into more pieces. One supercontinent became two, and then a few continents. Pangaea wasn't the first supercontinent, but who knows? Maybe it won't be the last, though we'll probably never see it in our lifetimes. Type 2 diabetes happens when your body can't produce enough insulin or doesn't use it properly. This causes sugar to build up in your blood, which over time can damage nerves and blood vessels. It's a huge problem. Over 38 million Americans have diabetes, and 90 to 95% of them are dealing with type 2. Now, here's the disturbing part. A study found that people taking common antidepressants like SSRIs or tricyclics are twice as likely to develop diabetes. And doctors have known about it since 2008. What's even scarier is that the number of prescriptions for antidepressants keeps climbing, from 32.7 million in 2013 to 37.3 million in 2018. I'm not sure what that's supposed to tell us. Ludwig van Beethoven died at 56 in 1827 after years of dealing with all sorts of health problems. Hearing loss, digestive issues, and liver disease, to name just a few. In 1802, he wrote a letter, the Heiligenstadt Testament, asking his doctor to figure out what had caused his illnesses after he died. Fast forward nearly 200 years, and scientists were finally able to honor that request by analyzing DNA from preserved locks of Beethoven's hair. The results? Well, they ruled out some conditions, like celiac disease and lactose intolerance, but instead of answers, they actually uncovered something totally unexpected. Evidence of an extramarital affair somewhere in Beethoven's family tree. It caused a bit of a stir, but as far as solving the real mystery of his health, well, we're still left in the dark. It's easy to think pufferfish inflate by sucking in air, but they actually fill up with water. When threatened, they gulp down water into a special sac near their bellies to balloon up and fend off predators. If they're out of the water, they might use air instead, but their real defense mechanism happens underwater. Plus, some species like the Diodontidae have an extra layer of defense. Sharp, spiky scales to make sure predators think twice. A desert is somewhere you think of as being dry and remote, and they don't come much drier than the Atacama Desert. Situated in northern Chile, even a picture of it makes me want a glass of water. It's thought to be the driest area on the planet. The parched landscape was treated to a couple of storms in 2015 and 2017, but something like that hadn't happened in around 500 years. So there isn't a drop of liquid to be seen for miles, right? Wrong. While you wouldn't want to be stuck out there, the Atacama Desert is in fact next door to the Pacific Ocean. This means that the driest place in the world is neighbors with the biggest and wettest water mass on Earth. A study by the University of Minnesota found that a lot of twins who were separated at birth ended up having similar happiness levels later in life. Their research inspired further studies by researchers at the London School of Economics, who then identified a gene called 5-HTT, which influences serotonin production. They discovered that people with two long versions of the gene were better equipped to handle stress, focus on the positives, and avoid depression. In fact, after studying 2,500 Americans, over 35% of those who were happy had two long versions of the gene. In contrast, only 19% of those with two short versions were satisfied with their lives. So, our happiness may actually be completely out of our hands. Trying to pin down exactly how many species share our planet is a tricky business. Estimates are all over the place, ranging from 3 million to more than 100 million. Most experts tend to settle around 8.7 million, with about 6.5 million species living on land and 2.2 in the ocean. But even that's just an estimate. We've only officially documented about 2.1 million species so far. The rest? Well, they're still out there waiting to be discovered. The word alphabet is actually a combination of the first and second letters of the Greek alphabet, alpha and beta. The term was first used in its Latin form, alpha-betum, by early Christian writers like Tertullian in the 2nd and 3rd century CE and St. Jerome. So every time you recite the alphabet, you're basically giving a little nod to ancient Greece. Or Hebrew, that's Aleph Bet. We all know about the man in the moon. At least I hope we do, because I'm going to feel really old otherwise. But anyway, it looks like the man in the moon has a couple of crazy siblings that I didn't know about. In addition to the thing wolves howl at that we're all familiar with, there are two other objects which are in close proximity to us, at least in cosmic terms. The catchily titled 3753 Franja sticks pretty close to Earth's orbit around the sun. Meanwhile, asteroid 2002 AA29 comes and says hello every century or so, appearing in the sky at a distance of approximately 4 million miles. Wave hello to the nice asteroid as it goes by, kids. Hello. The theory, called water memory, suggests that water can remember whatever it comes into contact with, whether it's music, words, or even thoughts. The theory originated with Masaru Emoto, a Japanese researcher who claimed that water forms different crystalline structures depending on its exposure to words, music, and thoughts. While the scientific community remains skeptical, some studies actually do suggest that water's molecular structure might react to external influences. If true, it could change everything. I mean, just think about it. What would it mean for us if water retains traces of its environment? Could it affect what we drink, how medicines work, or even our own bodies? And I'm pretty sure that was the entire plot of Frozen 2. I told you I'd get back to this idea. Just like we rely on the good bacteria in our gut for digestion, the soil beneath our feet is teeming with bacteria, fungi, and viruses that help keep it healthy. These tiny organisms are crucial for planet growth and soil health. But here's the thing. We barely know anything about most of them because they can't be studied easily in a lab. Yet, research shows that certain microbes can actually help trees grow up to 3 times faster. This raises an exciting possibility. Could these good microbes be some of our strongest allies in the fight against climate change? By promoting faster plant growth, they could play a huge role in absorbing more carbon and supporting food security in a warming world. The potential is there, but there's still so much to discover about their hidden powers. Studies have found these tiny particles in everything, from bottled water to seafood, and even the air we breathe. Sea salt in particular is one of the worst offenders, with samples showing contamination by polymers like polyethylene, polypropylene, and polyamide, all byproducts of the massive plastic pollution in our oceans. While scientists continue to investigate the potential health risks we're saddling ourselves with, one thing is clear: microplastics are here to stay. We're familiar with the spectacle of lightning streaks, but lightning in a ball? It exists. How does lightning even scrunch into a ball in the first place? That's the staggering thing. We don't really know. There are various theories out there involving plasma bubbles and air vortexes, but experts are kind of stumped on the details. One of the craziest things about ball lightning is that it doesn't always stay outside. People have actually witnessed it flying into their homes through a window. They're just all Kamehamehas. Although that's a beam. Forget I said that. Kamehameha is a beam. It's just the ball part, till they make it a beam. It's a tough truth to swallow, but not every parent is thrilled about having children. The Opinion Research Institute asked 2,045 parents if they'd choose to have kids again if they could turn back time. The results? Nearly 20% of both mothers and fathers admitted they'd opt for a child-free life. For most of them, the regret stems from the impact parenting has on their careers. These parents believe they could have achieved more professionally without the responsibilities of raising children. We know animals do a lot for ecosystems. I mean, they're pollinating plants and spreading seeds for starters, right? But their role actually goes much deeper. They play their part when it comes to nutrient cycling and predator-prey balance, all things that are important to ecosystems, and we're only beginning to understand how it all works. For example, did you know that after a volcanic eruption, spiders help plants regrow by catching seeds in their webs? I mean, why didn't they teach us that in high school? So, how far does their influence go? Could animals be shaping entire ecosystems, maybe even the planet itself? For now, we're still figuring that out. Have you ever checked it? You haven't? I know I haven't. I have. But it's true. The opposite sides of a die, 6-sided only, always add up to 7. That means 1 is opposite 6, 2 is opposite 5, 3 is opposite 4. This clever design ensures that no matter which 2 opposite faces you roll, their total will always be the highest possible for a standard die. Next time you play Monopoly, maybe give it a look just to make sure. Scientists have discovered their fair share of incredible things over the centuries. In this respect, planet Earth is the gift that keeps on giving. In the early years of the 21st century, the hunt was on for what are called tetraneutrons. Experts thought they existed, but it was only a theory. What are tetraneutrons? They're nuclear clusters which have 4 neutrons and no protons. Neutrons and protons are particles that exist on a subatomic level, or they're smaller than an atom, in other words. Why are these tetraneutrons so important? Because for a long time, they were a vital missing link in how experts understand nuclei and their workings. In 2002, scientists discovered signs that tetraneutrons were more than a theory. It took another 21 years to actually find one. Amazing how something as long established as nuclear power is still being explored and researched by our finest minds, isn't it? Science is supposed to rely on facts, but a surprising number of studies don't hold up under scrutiny. In 2015, researchers tried to replicate 100 psychology experiments from top journals. The result? Only 40% of them produced the same results, and even the ones that worked showed weaker effects than reported. In 2018, another team tested 21 influential studies from prestigious journals like Nature and Science. They used larger participant groups, pre-registered their methods to avoid bias, and tighten the process. Still, only 13 studies held up under scrutiny. That's less than 2/3. With the population growing by about 1 billion every decade, you have to wonder just how many more people can the planet handle. We're already seeing the strain, from habitat destruction to climate change, and an increase in diseases spreading from animals to humans. As more people put pressure on the planet's resources, the big question is, where's the breaking point? Scientists have been debating this for years, but it's not a simple answer. It all depends on how we manage resources, food production, and our impact on the environment. Even then, the answer changes depending on countless factors, so it's not really a solid answer at all. If we figure out how to live more sustainably and in harmony with nature, Earth could support more people than we think. But if we don't make some changes, we could hit the limit sooner than we'd like. Have you ever thought about what color a mirror really is? You might assume it's silver or colorless, but technically, most mirrors have a slight green tint. Standard mirrors are made using a layer of silver behind glass which reflects light. However, they also reflect more of the green part of the light spectrum. It's one of those details we usually don't notice, but once you do, it's pretty hard to unsee. It's a reassuring thought for middle-aged people everywhere that they're not the only ones who carry a bit of extra weight around. Turns out the Earth has its own version of a spare tire, running right down the middle. The reason for this is, well, down to gravity. Just as gravity has an unfortunate effect on those with more generous proportions, so it affects a planet like the Earth. It exerts so much pressure on land and water on the surface that this forms a distinct bulge at the equator. If you've just eaten another bag of chips, you can hopefully feel a little less guilty now. It's okay, I was really fat once. So, well, first water, now plants. A few years ago, evolutionary ecologist Monica Gagliano set out to prove that plants might be smarter than we think. Using Mimosa pudica, a plant that closes its leaves when touched, Gagliano built a special shelf that dropped the plants a few feet. At first, the plants reacted defensively, curling their leaves shut. But after being dropped a few times, they stopped responding, as if they realized there was no danger. To test their memory, Gagliano paused the experiment for a month, and then dropped the shelf again. The mimosa plants stayed calm, proving that they remembered the experience and knew it was harmless. Consciousness, our ability to be aware of ourselves and everything happening around us, might just be one of the biggest unsolved mysteries out there. Even with all the advances in neuroscience, we still don't fully understand how brain activity translates into things like thoughts, emotions, or self-awareness. This is what philosopher David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness back in 1995. The real question is, how do basic physical processes in the brain, like neural impulses, transform into something as personal as conscious experience? It's a mystery that scientists, philosophers, and even theologians are still trying to figure out. Diamonds might be marketed as rare and precious, but they're actually one of the most common gemstones on Earth. The idea that diamonds are rare comes from a century-long marketing campaign by the De Beers Company, who carefully controlled supply to create the illusion of scarcity and drive up prices. In reality, diamonds aren't nearly as rare as we've been led to believe. In fact, other gemstones like rubies, sapphires, and emeralds are far less common than diamonds. So while diamonds may seem exclusive, it's mostly the result of smart advertising. Yeah, we've definitely been duped. Capitalism. Yay, corporate greed. If you get aggravated at your local authority telling you to recycle your plastics and such, then spare a thought for Mother Nature. She's been recycling the very ground you walk on since time immemorial. It truly is the circle of life. Or, to be more precise, magma. Hard rock starts off as magma, and it tends to wind up as magma also. This is due to the routine it goes through, where magma deep underground rises to the surface. Here it cools and becomes rock. Going back to those tectonic plates we mentioned, although that was paper, hang on, it becomes rock. Going back to those tectonic plates we mentioned earlier in the video, rock is subject to wear and tear. Igneous rock shavings come loose and sink back to the earth where pressure turns them into sedimentary rocks. And as the tectonic plates grind together and the plates slide under one another, that exposes the sedimentary rock underground to the fiery core of the planet. So rock is liquefied back into piping hot magma, ready to go back to the surface all over again. Rinse and repeat. Well, here's a fact to make your skin crawl. Your face is home to thousands of microscopic mites, and they're getting busy while you sleep. Demodex follicularum and Demodex brevis are tiny creatures that live in your hair follicles, especially around your eyebrows, eyelashes, and hairline. Scientists guesstimate that the average person carries between 1.5 to 2.5 million of these mites. Why the nighttime activity? Well, as scientist Holly Menninger explained, it's probably because it's safer for them to crawl out and party while their human host is asleep. So, sweet dreams, I guess. Astronomers have mapped out much of the universe, but there's still one big question. Where is all the regular matter? This mystery is called the missing baryon problem. Baryons, the particles that make up ordinary matter, like protons and neutrons, seem to be in short supply. According to our calculations, a significant portion of them is just missing. The latest research suggests these missing baryons might be hiding in the vast stretches of gas between galaxies, known as the warm-hot intergalactic medium, or WIM. But even though we have this clue, scientists still haven't quite figured out their exact location or nature, so the mystery isn't fully solved yet. Farts are so much faster than you might think. According to an NBC News report, the average fart travels at an impressive speed of 6.8 miles an hour, or about 10 feet per second. That means your gas is moving a lot speedier than you probably imagined. And if you're curious, the science of flatulence has a name: flatology. Yes, there are scientists dedicated to studying farts. And guess what? They study up to 12 years to get there. As I just said, planet Earth is more than a little toasty at the core. How hot is it exactly? Well, it's thought to be in the region of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is an interesting coincidence because that is the same temperature you'll find on the sun. Think about it. The insides of the Earth are as flaming hot as the sun's surface. That is one heck of a furnace we're packing down there. Prions are tiny proteins with a horrifying ability. They misfold and trigger a domino effect, causing other proteins in your brain to do the same. This chain reaction leads to the buildup of amyloid plaques, which destroy brain tissue. The result is rapid and uncontrollable neurodegeneration that is always fatal. The worst part is that we have no idea why it happens or how to stop it. Prion disease can appear out of nowhere, be inherited, or be contracted, and symptoms can take years to show. But once they do, victims usually have less than 2 years to live, and their final months are nothing short of agonizing. Okay, wait. Maybe we should first ask if Isaac Newton was wrong. His theory of gravity was solid enough to get us to the moon, but it breaks down when we're dealing with extreme speeds or strong gravitational fields like near black holes. That's where Einstein's general relativity came in and improved our understanding. It explains things like how light bends near massive objects and how space and time warp around black holes. But even Einstein's theory isn't above being questioned. Scientists have noticed some strange things that don't quite add up. Take the unexpected slowing down of spacecraft like Pioneer 10 and 11, something gravity alone can't fully explain. These odd little details suggest that there might be something missing in our current understanding of physics. Let's be real. We'll do just about anything to have fun with our pets. Oh, right, buddy? But in Sweden, they've taken it to a whole new level. Their rabbits compete in rabbit show jumping. Yep, since 1994, the Swedish Federation of Rabbit Jumping has been hosting competitions where bunnies hop over little hurdles. With over 1,100 members across 20 clubs, this unconventional sport has grown into a full-blown event. So, it just goes to show that we'll do just about anything with our pets, even if it means turning them into little athletes. Right, buddy? Oh, you're focused elsewhere. Say hi, everyone. This is Pika, which is short for Picasso. Okay, buddy. Love you. Go, go, go. Earthquakes cause major destruction and death. You don't have to be a scientist to work that out. However, how bad can an earthquake get? Well, I said at the beginning of this video that an earthquake might be so powerful that it could break the planet in half, and I wasn't kidding around. This is something that may happen should a quake measuring a ground trembling magnitude of 12 on the Richter scale take place. Thankfully, the highest they go appears to be 9.5, so no need to plan your escape just yet. Did you know that being single for life can increase your risk of developing dementia by 42%? And it's not just lifelong singles. Widowers face a 20% higher risk too. The risks also extend to cancer care. Researcher Joan Del Fattore uncovered that single patients often receive less aggressive treatments due to biased assumptions about their ability to cope alone. Del Fattore herself had to fight for life-saving care after her doctor doubted her resilience without a spouse. The typical way of drawing conclusions from experiments, using statistical significance, has some serious flaws. Here's a quick example. If you run an experiment twice and get statistically significant results both times, you'd think that's stronger evidence than doing it once, right? Well, not quite. If the second result is just a little less significant, the combined p-value, the thing that tells you how strong your evidence is, can actually become less impressive. Weird, right? It's confusing because you'd expect more data to strengthen the case, not make it weaker. The whole system can feel like a mess, and some experts believe game theory or other advanced mathematical approaches could eventually help make sense of it. Penguins may look like they're waddling around on straight legs, but don't be fooled. They absolutely have knees. Their legs are just cleverly hidden under layers of thick feathers and fat, making it seem like their legs are much shorter than they really are. In fact, a penguin's leg bones are similar to most birds, complete with a femur, knee joint, tibia, and fibula. It's just that their short, stocky bodies make their knees less obvious. How does this work? By looking at the numbers, if you tally up all the known viruses on the planet, you reach a staggering figure of 10 nonillion. Did you even know what a nonillion was before you watched this video? Yeah, me neither. It's a number equal to 1 with as many as 54 zeros after it. The number of zeros it has depends on where you are in the world. It is that crazy. Anyway, the upshot is that 10 nonillion viruses outstrips the number of stars in our sky. Not just our skies, but the entire universe. On a scale of 1 to 10, how freaked out are you right now? Let us know in the comments below. Death is supposed to be the end, right? But new research shows the brain might not shut down as quickly as we thought. Some genes linked to brain growth and repair can reactivate hours or even days after a person is declared clinically dead. The implications are horrifying to say the least. If the brain is still active, could there be some kind of lingering awareness? And if that's possible, what would you say it means for how we define death? The findings are forcing scientists to rethink what happens in the hours or days after the heart stops, and it's raising questions that we're not quite ready to answer. You might have seen the headline saying cancer is mostly caused by bad luck. That claim comes from a study in Science that stirred up a lot of debate. The study wasn't saying everything about cancer is random, though. It simply pointed out that many cancers arise from random mutations that happen when cells divide, things beyond our control. Naturally, some people didn't like that interpretation, feeling it overshadowed the roles of lifestyle, genetics, or environmental factors. The reality is that scientists still don't agree on just how much of cancer is due to chance versus things like heredity, your genes, or lifestyle, smoking, diet, etc. It's a complex mix that science is still untangling. Here's a mental math hack that'll change the way you look at the world. Percentages are reversible. That means 8% of 25 is the same as 25% of 8. And trust me, one of these is always easier to figure out in your head. Instead of calculating 16% of 25, just flip it to 25% of 16. It's much quicker. This little trick makes percentages feel less daunting and can come in handy next time you're trying to work out a tip or quick discount in your head. Give it a try. Earth is described as a blue-green planet, but let's face it, it's mainly blue. Water makes up no less than 70% of our surface, and as I said before, there are a bunch of life forms down there that we have little to no idea about. As for the enormous quantities of water, well, the jury is also very much out. Popular thinking is that ice-laden asteroids struck our planet and the water melted, arriving that way. Over 2.5 billion adults are overweight, and nearly 900 million of them are obese as of 2022. 733 million people are suffering from hunger. That's it. That should be enough of a fact, but I'll just say one more thing about the statistic. There's a deep inequality in global food distribution. On one side, millions of people are dying from hunger and malnutrition, while on the other, excessive consumption leads to life-threatening health issues like heart disease and diabetes. The world's problems aren't just about scarcity, they're about imbalance. Physicists have been scratching their heads for ages over how fluids, whether it's water, air, or gases, actually behave. The equations we use to describe their motion, called the Navier-Stokes equations, are so complicated that no one has fully solved them. We're not even sure if a general solution exists. And if it does, it might contain mysterious singularities, or points where things become totally unpredictable. So the big question is chaos, like turbulence in the atmosphere or the unpredictability of the weather, something we just don't understand yet? Or is it simply impossible to predict, no matter how advanced our math gets? I'm sorry. Have you ever wondered why your dog struggles to find something right under their nose? It's because their snout gets in the way. While dogs have a wide field of vision, their long snouts, create a blind spot directly below. That's why Fido can smell the treat, but still looks confused about where it is. What's even more interesting is that dogs can technically see their snouts, but just like humans, their brains block it out since it's always in their field of view. This is Kira. Okay, go. I know, you want food. As we're all aware, a day on Earth lasts 24 hours. Was this always the case? Absolutely not. In fact, go back 620 million years and you would have experienced the day running approximately 22 hours. Go back 4.6 billion years and you'd be lucky to get 6. It seems the reason for this lies in the rotation of the Earth. Our rotation is controlled by forces of the moon and tides that hold it back little by little. This results in a delay of approximately 2 milliseconds every century. That's right, I said every 100 years. So you will be relieved to hear that there's no extra long workdays on the horizon for you. The WO virus is a bacteriophage, meaning it targets bacteria that live inside spiders and insects. What sets this virus apart is that it hasn't just stolen genetic material from bacteria, but also from its host, the black widow spider. Specifically, WO has hijacked the gene responsible for producing the spider's deadly venom, and to make matters worse, WO has also co-opted genes that allow it to evade the immune systems of its hosts. So now we have a rapidly mutating, immune-resistant virus armed with the genetic blueprint for black widow venom. And while it doesn't target humans yet, that's not exactly comforting. The universe runs on 4 basic forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. What's pretty mind-blowing is that if you crank up the energy enough, some of these forces actually start to blend together. Physicists have already seen the electromagnetic and weak nuclear forces unify in particle accelerators, and with even more energy, the strong nuclear force is expected to join in. But gravity? That's where things get tricky. So far, no particle accelerator, including the famous Large Hadron Collider, has enough power to bring gravity into the mix. The LHC operates at about 14 trillion electron volts, but we need something a trillion times stronger to even attempt unifying gravity with the other forces. Not exactly something we'll see in the near future. To make things more complicated, grand unified theories, which try to explain how these forces fit together, have their own problems. Some predict things like proton decay, where protons eventually break down, but we'll never see that happen. Others predict magnetic monopoles, isolated north or south poles, but no one's found any yet. So while it's possible that all forces could merge into one, it's a mystery we're still far from solving. Sharks first appeared around 400 million years ago, way back in the Devonian period. These early sharks were already top predators, thriving in the prehistoric oceans. In comparison, trees only began to sprout around 350 million years ago, making them 50 million years younger than sharks. So, if you think about it, sharks have survived the rise and the fall of dinosaurs, volcanic eruptions, and massive climate shifts, all while trees were still evolving from simple plants. And that's why they're the ultimate kings of the sea. Don't come to me with those killer whale arguments. Sharks were here long before that. Oh, I didn't know I'd pick a fight with killer whales. What's your favorite shark? Let me know in the comments below. This is a particularly cool entry because I get to make a reference to Ghostbusters. I love the first movie. The second, not so much, but though it does feature an interesting plot element, which is sentient slime. Is this some far-out idea dreamt up by the scriptwriters? No, you can indeed find slime that shows signs of intelligence, specifically slime mold. Get enough slime mold cells together and you end up with something that appears to act like a brain. Think I may have lost the plot? Well, the proof is in the pudding. The slimy pudding. This mold can detect food, use memory, and share information. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Slime mold wrote the script for this video. I'm kidding, it didn't. Also, I like Ghostbusters too. So damn you, slime mold, for making me say I didn't like it. The 1 is still better, but 2 is great. I like 2. Scientists at the State University of New York have successfully developed a way to control rats' minds. By sending electrical signals directly into their brains, researchers can guide their movements from a distance of up to 460 meters, or 1,500 feet. While this raises serious ethical concerns for the poor rats, the implications go far beyond animal welfare. The fact that minds, any minds, can be controlled like this is terrifying. If this technology evolves, it could be adapted for larger animals, or even humans. Seriously, the potential for abuse is staggering. What's being tested on rats today could have very scary consequences for humanity tomorrow. We've got a pretty good understanding of how most forces work. Electromagnetism is all about the exchange of photons. The weak nuclear force? It's carried by W and Z bosons. And gluons are responsible for holding atomic nuclei together through the strong nuclear force. All of these forces can be broken down into individual particles, which makes them easier to study. But gravity? Well, as you just heard, gravity is a bit of a rebel. Most theories suggest that gravity should be carried by a particle called a graviton. The problem is, we haven't found any yet. Even worse, if gravitons do exist, they interact with matter so rarely that they might be impossible to detect against the constant background noise of the universe. And if gravitons have any mass at all, it would be incredibly tiny, smaller than even the lightest particles we know, like neutrinos. Some ideas, like string theory, suggest that gravitons and other particles might actually be tiny loops of energy, but so far the math hasn't given us much to work with. Here's one that might catch you off guard. The correct plural of cul-de-sac isn't cul-de-sacs, it's culs-de-sac. Since cul-de-sac is a French term meaning bottom of bag, its plural follows French grammar rules. So when you're talking about multiple dead-end streets, the proper choice is culs-de-sac. Some dictionaries do list cul-de-sacs as acceptable, but if you want to be technically correct, stick with culs-de-sac. It's the safer bet. Geologists were probably more than a little surprised when rocks appeared to move by themselves on a Death Valley lake bed. I'm not sure whether you'd see much if you chose to sit down and watch. However, these huge and heavy objects slid their way across the scorched surface in a dramatic and bizarre fashion. What's going on here? There isn't a definitive explanation, but one theory is that ice can form on the rocks. The ice melts and the moisture then reacts with the wind to create a kind of natural slalom effect. What if machines could think or feel the way we do? Some researchers believe that as AI becomes more advanced, it might develop its own form of consciousness. This idea, called panpsychism in artificial intelligence, suggests that awareness isn't limited to living beings. It could exist in circuits and code too. If true, this would radically change our understanding of consciousness and blur the line between life and machines. It also raises serious ethical questions. Should a conscious AI have rights? How should it be treated? And what happens if machines become capable of understanding human emotions or even feeling them? The universe has been around for about 13.8 billion years, so it seems pretty stable, right? But what if all that stability is just an accident waiting to happen? The concept of a false vacuum suggests that empty space might not be in its lowest possible energy state, thanks to the Higgs boson and its field, which gives particles mass. Physicists like Alexander Kusenko think the calculations we've done so far hint that our universe could actually be in this false state. If that's true, the universe isn't as stable as we'd like to think. With enough energy from a major cosmic event, this false vacuum could shift into a lower energy state. That would trigger something called bubble nucleation, where a new bubble of true vacuum expands at the speed of light, wiping out everything, including matter as we know it. Eventually, the universe we live in could get replaced by a whole new one with different physical laws. It sounds bonkers, and admittedly a bit terrifying, but don't worry. The fact that we're still here means that it's probably not something we need to lose sleep over. Still, it does make you wonder, did our universe begin because another one's vacuum popped and we're just a cosmic accident? When we talk about storing data in the cloud, it sounds like everything's floating somewhere up in the sky. But the truth is, most of the internet's infrastructure isn't up in the air, it's actually deep below the ocean. Around 99% of all international data is transmitted through undersea cables, stretching thousands of miles across the seabed. These cables, often thinner than a garden hose, connect continents and make global communication possible. Whether you're streaming your favorite show, you're watching your favorite YouTube channel, wink, sending an email or making a video call, chances are your data is traveling through one of these cables. So, while we might like to picture our data floating around somewhere, it's actually diving deep beneath the sea. There's nothing like a nice, relaxing day strolling by the lake. Of course, you may not have a lake in your vicinity, and after hearing about our final fact, you might be grateful. You see, lakes are capable of exploding. The reason it happens is due to primal forces beneath our feet. We've looked at stuff like magma and the pressures that can build up under the ground. Such pressures can cause havoc underwater also. Take the lakes of Nyos, Manon, and Kivu, for example. Located in Central Africa, these particular bodies of water pack a deadly punch. Volcanic magma under the lakebed releases carbon dioxide. This seeps into the wet stuff from below. If it suddenly decides to release itself from that water, the results can be explosive. The large amount of carbon dioxide meeting the air leads to people being unable to breathe. While an exploding lake sounds wild and comedic, The reality of it is all too terrible. Scientists at the Weizmann Institute in Israel have created the first ever synthetic embryo. No sperm, no eggs, no fertilization. They used stem cells from mice to grow an embryo-like structure complete with a tiny brain, an intestinal tract, and even a beating heart. For many religious people, the idea of creating life in a lab goes against everything they believe. And even if you're not religious, it's hard to ignore the ethical questions that it raises. What are the limits? Should we even be doing this? If it has a brain, can it think? Feel? While researchers highlight the potential benefits like improved transplants and fewer animal studies, it raises serious questions about just how far we're willing to go in the name of science. Slime mold might look like a simple blob, but don't let that fool you. It's surprisingly smart for something without a brain. Technically, it's a single-celled organism, but when multiple slime mold cells come together, they form a massive network that can solve puzzles and even navigate mazes. What's even more impressive is its ability to make decisions based on risk and reward, and some evidence suggests it can even keep track of time, all without a brain or nervous system. How? Nobody knows. Did you know apples can float in water because they contain about 25% air? That air trapped inside gives them enough buoyancy to stay on the water's surface. This makes apples perfect for games like bobbing for apples. You can easily grab them before they sink, if you're quick enough, of course, and have great mouth-eye coordination. The name Earth has been used in connection with our planet for centuries. It makes sense. I mean, the surface is covered with soil and what have you, so why not call it Earth? Trouble is, we don't know who came up with the name in the first place. I'm surprised to hear this is a mystery, aren't you? Because while you can trace the word to Old English sources, as in the earliest version of the English language, not to mention High Germanic, it hasn't been established which wordsmith was ultimately responsible for calling it Earth. I'll take credit, it's fine, me. Just write me, Earth, Mike, 2023. 2024, damn it!